This is Amud Yomi, Gemara in Berachos, Daf Chof Dalid Amud Beis. We pick it up towards the bottom of Chof Dalid Amud Aleph. Amar Rav Chanina. We are 5 lines from the bottom. First word on the line is Shenemar at the 2 dots. Amar Rav Chanina, says Rav Chanina, Ani Reisi, I saw as Rebbe Shetala Tfilav. I saw Rebbe that he hung up his tefillin from a peg. He suspended them. He took the tefillin. There was a peg in the wall, peg wherever it was, and he hung up the tefillin. Meisvei asked the Gemara 1 second. Says the Bryce, if you hang your tefillin, your life will be suspended. Darshei Chamurais Amru, those who darshin the hidden psukim explain. Vayu chayecha tuliyim lecha mineged. Says that the pasuk in Devarim that your life will be suspended before you. Zat toilet tefillah. So how can you tell me that? Rebbe hung up his tefillin. We see that it's quite a dreadful practice. Says the Gemara, loy kasha ha b'ritzua. One is talking about that you hang up the tefillin by the ritzua, which is aser. Ha b'ksiza. One is by the box, which is what Rebbe did, which is mutter. Teretz number 1. Teretz number 2. And again, it just basically means that the box is sitting on a peg. Both those cases are aser. Rebbe hung it up in their bag. He didn't actually hang up the tefillin. He asked the Gemara, remember, what's the chiddush? Of course, it's pashut, you can hang up your tefillin bag. Mao the Tema, says the Gemara, Tibaya Nacha Sefer Torah. Maybe your tefillin needs to be placed down just like a Sefer Torah does. Kamash Malah, and explains the Gemara that no, only the tefillin themselves, only the boxes perhaps, but the bag, that is not a problem. That is allowed to be hung up. Vamar Rav Chanina continues the Gemara as we wrap up yesterday's Amid. Ani Reisi as Rabbi Shegiyek. I saw Rabbi that he was giyek, he burped, he belched, whatever he did, upiyek, he yawned, v'nis atesh, and he sneezed, v'rak, and he spat on the ground as we turn over to Chavdalit Amebeis, omemashmesh bebigdai, and he moved around his garment. Rashi said, for what reason? To remove a louse, a kina that was biting him. But he would not wrap himself in a talis if it would fall during Shemon Esrei. And when he would yawn, you put his hand on his chin to cover his mouth. So all the different practices of Rebbe while he would daven. Says the Gemara Meisvei, one who allows his voice, one who davens loud, he doesn't have a lot of emunah. It's as if Hashem can't hear him. One who davens loudly, again, mashmiya koila just means other people hear you. The next level is magbiya koila, you daven loud. That's minaviyeh sheker. Megayik umefayik, you belch your yawn, or is it magisei ruach? That's considered about gaiva hori. Hamis atish b'tfilasai, you sneeze is simin raloi. V'yishayim nikashu mechor, shows that you're mechor, you're disgusting. Harak b'tfilasai, if you spit, kilu rak with ne'amelach. So says the Gemara, I understand that he burped, that he yawned. That's not a kasha. Why? When Rebbe did it, it was an aynes. He wasn't able to hold it back. When the Brisa says it's a dreadful practice, that's if you do a l'ritzaynei, that's if you do it purposely. Kasha. But what about misatesh? Misatesh, by the very nature of it, is an involuntary action, and yet we see on one hand it sounds like it's not an appropriate practice, and Rav Chanina saw Rebbe that he did such. So how can we say that Rebbe was doing something that the Brisa writes that if one is a misatesh, it's a simin or aloi? Says the Gemara, misatesh nami loi kasha. Why not? Kan milamalo, when Chanina was talking about the Rebbe was misatesh, that meant from his mouth. When the Brisa says that's more a form of letting out gas, that's when it's a simin raloi. The Gemara proves that this is true. The Amar Rav Zera has taught us Amilsa Ibila li be Rav Hamnuna. The following thing I knew about Rav Hamnuna of is Kila li bikuli Talmudai, and it was equal to everything that I learned. That what? If you sneeze, it's a good simin. Because he's getting satisfaction, which is what a sneeze is. But again, that's only if it's going to be an itosh milmala from his mouth. So says the Gemara, okay, so now and whereas the other type of misate shlani ogas, that's going to be where the Brisa says it's a simin raloi. Elorok arok kasha. What about the fact that Rebbe spit? And it says if you spit, it's kilu spit before a king. Says the Gemara, rok arok nami loy kasha. Why? Evshir kid Rav Yehuda. Damar Rav Yehuda, Emir v'tilav, and it's dami loy roi. Mavliya b'talas, so you should absorb it directly into a garment. Vintalas nahu, but if it's a nice garment, Mavliya b'arak susai, in your turban, and therefore it's not the Rebbe spat on the ground. Spitting on the ground, that's where the Bryce is talking about kilu orak lefnei hamelech. But spitting inside a garment, that's not a problem, and we can assume that's what Rav Chanina said Rebbe did. Says the Gemara, Ravina was standing behind the Rav Ashi in his damin leroik, his middle of damin, he has some spit in his mouth. Patke la chayre. What does he do? He spit it behind him. Amar le Ravina said to him, Lo savar lamar, Lad Rav Yehuda mavliya b'afar ksusai. Why didn't you do like Rav Yehuda says that you should somehow take off your turban or whatever it is and get the spit inside of there? Amar le anina daite. I'm very delicate, such a thing would bother me, and that's why he spit it over his shoulder. Different ways of getting rid of the spit, but of course not lefanav, which would be considered kilurok lifnei hamelech. And we're on the first medium-sized line, the two dots. Continues the Gemara, discussing the brisa that we started off the top of the Amud with. This brisa was 3 lines from the top. Hamashmiya koile betvilasa. If someone allows his voice to be heard while he's davening, hareizeh miketani amana. Says the Gemara in Ravuna, is only referring to you could have had kavana quietly and you didn't. Mutter, then you're allowed to daven a little bit loud. That's only when you're by yourself. You're going to come to confuse other people. You're davening Shon Esrei aloud. Other people are going to hear. That one should not do. Says the Gemara. Says the Gemara, Rav Abba becomes Atesh Minei de Rav Yehuda. Rav Abba would not come into the base of Medrash. Why? Because he didn't want to see Rav Yehuda. Why not? Because Rav Abba wanted to go to Eretz Yisrael, and Rav Yehuda didn't let him. Why did Rav Yehuda not let him? Because Rav Yehuda said, Eretz Yisrael. Oiver ba'asei. Why? Shenemar, the pasuk says, Bavela yuvau. They shall be brought to Bavel. Vishama, and there in Bavel, they should remain ad yoim pakti until they redeemed Oisam Dom Hashem. Says Hashem. So Rav Yehuda felt strongly that Rav Abba should not be going to Eretz Yisrael. Amar, Rav Abba said, I'm going to go learn something. I'll sit outside the base medrash, and at least I'll hear the shir from there. And then I'm going to go to Eretz Yisrael. Also, Rav Yehuda, he heard that they were teaching in front of Rav Yehuda. So in the middle of davening, and he passes gas. He has to wait until the ruach passes, until the smell passes. And then he continued davening. Some say, and he feels the urge to pass gas. He should walk back 4 amos, pass the gas, wait until the smell passes, then go back 4 amos forward where he was davening and continue davening. And then what does he say? A short tefillah. You created for us openings and cavities. It's known before you. Our shame and our humiliation that we suffered during our lives. And at the end, what are we going to be? Worms and maggots. And after that short tefillah, almost a shortened form of Ashayatzar, then he goes back and he davens where he stopped. Amar later, Rav Abba said, Die, just for that, it would have been enough. We continue on the last medium-sized line. Tanu Rabbanan. This goes back to yesterday's Amud Aleph, discussing sleeping undressed. If someone's sleeping undressed, but he's wearing, there's a type of garment on top of him. So he's wearing like a robe. Again, the important part is that everything under the robe is uncovered. There's no clothing on. And he can't take his head out of the robe because it's too cold. Or we can just say a simple example. He's undressed and he has a blanket on top of him. So the problem is that he has to say Shema. So what should he do? He makes a partition with the towels around his neck. Then he says Shema. And some say that no, he should press the garment or the blanket al libay on his heart and then say Shema. Says the Gemara of Tanakama. Tanakama, the obvious kasha, it says that you take the blanket and you put it around your neck and then you say Shema. How does that help? The whole issue over here is that your lathe sees your erva, they're both in one area and you're not wearing any clothing, so how can he say Shema? Says the Gemara, the Tanakama held a fascinating din that Libay Rayas Erva is mutter. Continues the Gemara, segueing from Libay Rayas Erva into saying Shema in unclean areas. Amar Rav Huna, Amar Rav Yechanan on the second very wide line. Someone is walking in a filthy alleyway. And what? And it's the time for Shema. It's about to be safe. Puts his hand over his mouth. The Kari Krishma. Amarli Rav Chizah said, Rav Chizah like him. And Amarli Rav Yechanan said this with his own mouth. I will never listen to him. Because how can you say it? You're in Mimutanas, I'm a new voice. Some say, Amar Rabba Rav Chana, Amar Rav Yeshua ben Levi. Hay Malach ben Mavoizam Tunavoiz Menich Yada Al Peva Karei Kriyashma. Amarli Rav Chisda this responded like him. Amarli Rav Yeshua ben Levi Bumei Loisi Atale. So now that we have two different versions of the story, now the Gemara asks, 1 second. Omi Amar Ravuna Achid, Rav Yuna actually say that you're allowed to say Shema in such an area of Amar Ravuna. Tam Chacham Asla Lamed B'Makayim Am Tunafais. Why? Fish Lamed B'Li Hera Taira. So he's not even allowing Hera Taira, and he's going to allow you to say Shema out of your mouth. Says the Gemara Loi Kasha. Kan is be'oimid, you're standing in the place. Kama ma'alich, you're walking. If you're walking, then we're going to be more lenient, and we're going to allow you to say Shema. Says the Gemara, Miyam Rav Yechanan Achi. But did Rav Yechanan actually say this day that you're allowed to say Shema in an unclean area? Of Amar Rav Yechanan, say. So again, how we allow, is it possible that he said that you ought to say Shema in such an area? I mean, if you're going to say too, that what? Kan be'oimid, one is where you're standing in the basic kisi b'sam merchatz kamen mahalech. Eini, is that true? Avua avikazel basid Rav Yechanan, Avua was behind Rav Yechanan. Vavkakari kriyishma. And Avua was saying Shema, kimatu b'rosam t'nafas ishtik, he was quiet. Amar Rav Yechanan le'echana hader, where should I go back? Amar le Rav Yechanan said to him, Mishisik de ligmar es kulai. So what do we see clearly? We see clearly Rabbi Yechanan holds that you're not allowed to see Shema in such an unclean area. Says the Gemara, Hachi Kamar Lo. Really, you know what Rabbi Yechanan is responding to his Talmud of Avua? Lididi lai severely. According to me, I don't hold that you had to stop saying Shema. According to you, this fear luck that you stop saying Shema. So says the Gemara, that is the Shita of Rav Yechanan. And we conclude that we just finished learning that Rav Huna is letting you to cover your mouth and say Shema, based on what we just said, V'shem Rav Yechanan, that there is a heter if the Zman Kriyishma is passed, he's in V'asam Tanafis. And Rav Chisda screamed, and he said, Alikim, is such a thing possible? Says the Gemara, Tanik V'asi de Rav Huna, Tanik V'asi de Rav Chisda. Tanik V'asi de Rav Huna, Melech V'asi Tanafis, V'nichad Ape V'yikr Kriyishma. Tanik V'asi de Chisda, Melech V'asi Tanafis, V'yikr Kriyishma. V'lo'ayid al-Shem ha'yikayrei, u'ba paisek, you should stop. Loi pasak ma. According to Rav Chisda, what if you didn't stop? Answers the Gemara. On him, the pasuk says, "He gave them halachas that were not good, and halachas they cannot live." Rav Asi Amar, woe to those who put other iniquity upon themselves. Rav Ada bar Rava Amar Kidvar Hashem Baza. Kidvar Hashem Baza. All three psukim basically proving that it was an aveira if you didn't stop. Says the Gemara. With this we conclude in pasuk Mascharoi. With this, you're going to have long life. We'll pick it up from Rav Huna on the bottom of this Amud B'siyata Dishmaya.